Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Alan Craig. I'm a partner at Forvis Mazars, where I head the business advisory section. Today we're going to be holding a virtual roundtable. I would like to say it will be an interesting one, definitely. Where we're going to be talking about scams, particularly with an emphasis on scams relating to business. We will be talking about spotting scams, preventing these scams, and also importantly on how to respond to these scams. This is one of the initiatives that Forvis Mazars is organizing or is taking in line with the International Fraud Awareness Week, which is being organized, a global initiative being organized by the ACFE, which is the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. It is one of the initiatives that we will be carrying on. Fraud Awareness Week actually will start on Sunday and last the whole week, and during the next week we are going to be taking a number of initiatives throughout the whole week, including, but not just limited to, a number of in-community outreach sessions to the elderly, to the youths. So if anybody wants more information and wants more information on what we're doing, I encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn or on other social media channels that we have. And today I'm really excited and also honored to be to have this distinguished panel with me, who I would like to introduce. Starting, ladies first, always, as usual. I've got Rebecca Barthe, who is an Associate Director at Forvis Mazars. Rebecca is a forensic accountant. She is also heads our forensic and investigation service line. To my left, I have Ryan Kallus, I think Caruana, sorry. Ryan needs probably little introduction to many of you, because Ryan is a vocal advocate about scams and propagating awareness within our community. Ryan heads the anti-financial crime office at Bank of Valletta, and for his sins, as we were talking about before, is also the MLRO. And just talking about Bank of Valletta, I would also sort of like to mention, and I think it's important, the positive initiatives that Bank of Valletta have taken with the Malta Chamber, where they have organized a number of initiatives, including a number of podcasts in relation to fraud and themes related to fraud. So I have watched those, and I think they're interesting, and anybody who is interested in this matter, I encourage them to look for them. Ramon, on my right, is also a partner at Forvis Mazars. He's also my lunch buddy. Ramon heads our cybersecurity service line. And last and not least, I have Inspector Clive Brimmer, who is representing the Malta Police Force, who we said, I can call you Clive, so we'll call you Clive, so thank you. Clive is also a familiar face and has taken a number of initiatives to create public awareness about fraud, about scams throughout the years, and has also participated in a lot of these events with Ryan. So Clive is an inspector within the the FCID, the Financial Crime Investigation Team, and Clive regularly is investigating scams and fraud issues that we have. So just to set the context, research indicates and research shows that scams year on year are growing significantly and growing in double digit. In Europe alone, scams or fraud, including scams, have reached a total of over 200 billion in 1 year, and that year is 2023. If I do what Ryan does, Ryan, I'm going to steal this from you, okay? And if I had to divide that by the number of days in a year, that means in Europe alone, on a daily basis, we're losing $250 million a day to fraud and scams. And this takes me to my first question, and I'd like to direct this first question, Clive, to you. All these big numbers, all these big headlines, are they designed to shock us? Are they designed to alarm us? Are Maltese people, who are sometimes quite savvy, prone to these types of scams? Are they victim to this? What are you seeing? What is happening out there, Clive?
First of all, thank you for this invitation. I'm very pleased to join this panel. the problem is huge. I think that the numbers are showing that if you go to the data, the numbers are spiking high, it's going increasing. Let's say 20 years ago, we saw very minimum reports, let's say about 50 reports, which involved an online scam. But nowadays we're seeing thousands, hundreds and thousands of online scams, which vary from their typology. So basically I am investigating those which are cyber-enabled crime, those cyber crimes which technology is involved and facilitate to conclude the actual offense. But of course, there is the money laundering, which trying to layering the funds which actually it is borderless, so the money are actually going abroad, and the scammer trying to hide the proceeds accordingly. The numbers are showing, but if you look at the data and we categorize the cyber-enabled crime, and let's say the most major typologies like investment scams, Roman scams, and bank scams like smishing and phishing, which are very popular and very targeted to all range of individuals, rather to business, like the business email compromise, which is more targeted to businesses, like to small and medium enterprises. But we have even reports from big companies which were targeted and fell prey to these scams. So no one is safe. No one, even though that companies are infrastructured with software with particular architecture or engineering, whatever you can say it. But these typical scams, which are more likely to be affecting the people, the emotions, psychological. So it's easy. The perpetrator find the opportunity to attack the human being rather than infrastructure as such. So let's say there is an entity which is fully proofed IT structure. You can have like that, but there is the human intervention, and if it's a mind game. If the scammer play with your emotions, they are vulnerable, and the scam which would be affected would happen. So if I can give you in a short, if you permit, it's like for the last 3 years, let's take the investment scams. We saw it was a huge spike. We were going throughout the COVID. Same thing, there was the greed, everyone wants to be richer than he is. There was literally high returns, assumption of high returns. So we are speaking about like 7 million, and that's 2023. Just this typology. And by the way, those are the reported cases, so the bigger picture can be much more bigger. So let's say even the trend is getting changed. The crypto are involved. So basically the fiat and the crypto, first there is the transfer of fiat money, the money which we know, and then basically go to crypto wallets. Most of them are unregulated crypto wallets without the control or with the control of the holder. So it depends. So till September 2025 this year, there was roughly 10 million already with regards investment. The numbers being reported are much less, and this shows that the numbers are getting less, but the financial impact are being more impacted individually rather. So that's what the data is showing. It's like the BSEs, the business email compromise, when just one spoof domain, just one fake email, you can destruct a company as a whole. So, and we are speaking about thousands of euros and even millions. So we saw them. I can confirm them. The data is showing. You cannot deny or ignore the data, because as soon as the individual or the entity is going to report to us, we preserve any available evidence, and that's a proof of what is being lost.
So, really, I would say interesting, but I would also say worrying too. And I think a couple of interesting points come out from your point. One, the use of technology and the strength of that technology, and how scammers are sort of maybe circumventing technology. And I have a question to you later on that, Ramon. And also the fact that nobody is immune to this, and it is a big growing issue and problem. And Rebecca, I'm going to come to you. So from your experience, Rebecca, we hear about, yes, the investment scam, we hear about the pig butchering scam, which is related to the investment, the romance scam. But when it comes to businesses, as Clive said, businesses are not immune to this. What, from your experience, are you seeing is affecting, what scams are affecting businesses?
So you're mentioning the romance scams, we mentioned the investment scams. So these scams, like you're saying, target individuals. So they target individuals, so the scammer is going to communicate with this individual so that then they can exploit the trust and at the end of the day transfer money to these scammers. So, but like what the saying goes, that love is blind, and these people might believe that they're in a lovely relationship with these people. They really believe they need to help out these scammers because they obviously don't know that they're scammers, and they might also resort to business funds to pay off to the scammers. But that's how these romance scams would affect businesses indirectly. But for the purpose of this discussion, we want to talk about scams that affect businesses directly. And as Inspector Brimmer has mentioned earlier, there is this business email compromise, or what we call the BEC. So business email compromise. So like we're saying, no one is immune to these scams, be it big businesses, small businesses. And what happens with this business email compromise is that you have the scammer who would impersonate a trusted person. So let's say a scammer would impersonate a CEO or a supplier in an organization through email. So this can be done, like just in generic overview, this can be done in sort of two ways. So you have either the email which can be altered. So let's give an example. Let's say there is a scammer who wants to impersonate a partner at Forvis Mazars, and the M of Forvis Mazars in our email, instead of having letter M, they would have an R and an N next to each other. And you have to really look at that email to spot that email is altered. Or else scammers can also hack the trusted person, so the CEO or the supplier's mailbox. They would remain there, see what's going on, maybe spend weeks there, understand the way the business operates, understand the tonality that the supplier or the CEO would use, see who the supplier's customers are so that they can see what payments need to be made, so that then they can come out and attack. So we have to give an example of this business email compromise. Let's say we have a CEO of there's a scammer who's impersonating a CEO. So they would send an email to the employees. Usually they target people who are in finance, so they're going to target people who are making payments or authorizing payments. They would, so the scammer would send an email to impersonating the CEO, send an email to the employee and would say, listen, we need to pay off this supplier, it's urgent, you need to do it now. So there's that sense of urgency. They would also say that the IBAN number has been changed, so just please now redirect payments to this IBAN number. There's no need to go to the head of finance to check and to your verifications, because I've done that myself. I'm in a meeting right now, you cannot call me, but please initiate this ASAP. And obviously the targeted individual, so they have the CEO speaking to them, someone they really respect. The CEO is telling them, listen, I've already checked this with the head of finance. So they would then go ahead and send off these funds, and obviously they would have been scammed. So if we had to look at the key characteristics, you'd see either the altered email address, you'd see an invoice where the IBAN number is different to what you're used to paying, to the IBAN you're used to paying. There could also be, there's this sense of urgency. There's the CEO, the scammer would tell you that I cannot have a video call, I'm in a meeting right now, it's urgent, go ahead and do it. So there's that sense of urgency. just to make our lives more interesting, then they also add on these AI and deepfakes. So now we're also seeing that you can actually get on a video call with the CEO, which will be the scammer, right? Who would have cloned the voice, the image and all. And the CEO is actually telling you, listen, you need to pay off this invoice, and you're actually having a conversation with that CEO. So that's another type of scam. Just one last thing I'd want to mention is the synthetic identity fraud. So synthetic identity fraud is when you have a scammer who is using both fake and real information to come up with some sort of identity, so to create an identity. So they would use, for example, a real ID card number, but then use fake email, fake addresses, or a slightly altered name to create an identity, so that they can access some sort of services, or they can pretend they are a supplier who wants to work with an organization. What they would do is they would use AI to have fake documents, so fake passports and what have you. And the red flags we see here are that, for example, you know how documents need to be certified. For example, the certifiers won't be true. So if you go to look up the certifiers, you won't find any information about them. It could also be that when you look up the ID card in official databases, you're not going to find that information. Also, they wouldn't want to get on a call with you. They would also want to speed up the onboarding process as well. We notice with this type of scams. So I think in a nutshell, that's what I would say is affecting businesses at the moment.
Thank you for that, Rebecca. So if I can just gather that, sometimes the devil is in the detail, right? And you need to look at that detail. And Rebecca, if I can also pick something else from what you, if something doesn't feel quite normal, it doesn't mean it's wrong, but you probably need to question that, and you probably need to look into it slightly more. And Ryan, I want to come to you. As Bank of Valletta, you're sort of Malta's largest bank. What are you seeing? You probably have obviously a good spectrum or a wide spectrum of what is happening on the fraud front, especially when it relates to business. What are you seeing? Are there any sort of obviously anonymized stories, cases maybe that you could share that are real?
For sure. Yet again, I can confirm what Clive and Rebecca just highlighted, right? Rebecca just highlighted what is really happening in the business email compromise, the BEC, where unfortunately companies are being much effective, and so traders, and this is something that's affecting businesses huge amount of money. I know cases which they reach 500,000, 400,000 in one transaction, which we all know that for a company to do a transaction in that kind of amount, I think it's in their normal way of doing business, right? So this is how targeting it's highlighting. Also the urgency.
So we're not talking, Ryan, of 1,000 euros, 5,000 euros. There are big numbers, right?
This year, money lost runs into millions. Money saved from Bank of Valletta side, of course, even runs into millions. Right, so even the controls, the proactiveness highlights that we are taking, and we do understand that we have also a role to play, being the largest institution on the island, so that also shows higher risk when it comes to customers, etc. But yet again, what we are seeing is BEC, I would say it's quite common nowadays, unfortunately, and this is something that I do suggest that even businesses, companies, non-personal customers, so traders, also nowadays needs to test a bit the systems. I know that Ramon perhaps will go into that much more in detail. So, because at the end of the day, it is a cyber-enabled financial crime, is something I keep on telling. In fact, I give this example on other things, and if I'm repeating is because I really want to go there. That in previous months and years, right, and we had, and let's keep on doing this. There's the police here, and I won't want to give any bad advice, and we keep securing our assets, our homes with CCTVs, with cameras, and of course, let's keep on doing this kind of expectations, which are doing very well of outcomes. However, few people know that with our phones nowadays, we are 5 people in this room discussing, have all the assets on our phones. We have all of our world of our phones, and we just put our phones over there not to distract us. We'll just use our phone to go to these platforms, to just go with our phones to use this app, to use that, which we don't really know what that app is taking us as information. And yet again, this is where then it starts interesting. So for sure, then we have this volume of scams that Clive mentioned, that's phishing, smishing, where you receive an SMS. There's the urgency side of it. Your card is being blocked, there's a transaction which is being fraudulent, and you click on the message, and this is the first step where you are giving the key to the scammers, to the fraudsters, and then they do very unpleasant thing when they start doing transactions on your behalf, without even you knowing what's really happening in your account. So this is how you said the devil in the detail there. This is how the devil in the detail is when you click on certain links without even knowing what you are inputting. And I think there are those which I think they are very set cases. The Romance fraud. I think of all of the scams are bad. All of the scams are impacting people, both emotionally, both also financially. But I think if I have to choose one, which is really sad stories, because at the end of the day, I might say investment scams. Some of them are too good to be true, right? If I see an advert on Facebook or another platform. An interesting thing on Facebook, I mentioned it last Monday. I was on it, perhaps you saw it on my LinkedIn. And Facebook did 16 billion, it was even myself, I would say million, 16 billion of the revenue of Facebook. And from where it came? Oh, from scams. I'm quoting a very well sourced right here. So 16 billion of revenue of Facebook came from these people putting scams out there for us to be victim of. And while people are clicking on these ads, on these scams, Facebook are getting earned money. But let's keep on Romance fraud. And I need to share this example because I think this was an example that happened very recently that strikes me. I need to say, to show the level of preparedness that scammers are going into, right? And the level of psychology effect it's having on people, on customers. So without going into much merit on who is customer for obvious reasons. But professionally, I met a customer that the bank did block his account because he was being definitely scammed when it was being seen patterns behavior as definitely being a romance fraud. Fraud is a separate offense, so one of the obligations of subject person is to prevent and detect financial crime, and fraud is a financial crime, so we have an obligation also to stop and report where required. However, it felt that this customer, being as a 20-year-old customer or so, felt that we need to explain to him that you are being a victim of fraud. Even there were thousands of money being lost on a regular basis, and I went to one of our branches to speak with him, etc. But it seems that he wanted to take this even higher, and he wanted to speak with someone that he really needs. And I said, okay, let's speak with him in order to show him that he is a victim and at least to stop sending money. And something that, of course, I noticed afterwards when I met this customer was that we sent him the people that this individual is meeting from the bank side. There was myself and another two. Unfortunately, my name nowadays is quite common, so if you Google it, you will find what I do. And what this guy intelligently did was Googling who he is meeting. I think which is quite normal right nowadays. If you're going, to a medical appointment or meeting someone, you tend to go on this kind. And nowadays, even with these apps with AI, etc., can even do it even more quicker. I just did a couple of searches on these three people who were in the meeting. ChatGPT, if I have to use, they have a good summary on who I am, etc. And he just sent all my bio to the fraudster. Right? He was telling her or him, because we don't even know with whom they might speak, and they had it, I'm meeting this guy, this and that, because the bank stopped me from sending you more money, so please help me what I need to say. This individual showed me his phone, right? And the level of information that the fraudster gave on myself, what I was going to say, was ridiculous. He said that this individual will tell you this and that. Of course, I was going to tell this fraud, this is a scammer, don't keep on sending him money. And he was prepared that at one point in time he told me, you know how she is good? Because she already told me what you were going to tell me. And I told him, why? Because he said, well, let me show you. She told me already that you were going to stop me this or that, because I don't want me to keep sending her money. And she prepared me for this kind of conversations. You know? And it was something really, that I say, sad, and something else, and I will stop on this, something else that I try to show, but every now and then they were sharing some pictures. I said, okay, let's make this happening now, to show you that at least if you're not believing me, at least we'll see it together. And I just, through Google, I just dragged an image from his chat to Google Images, right? And Google Images give you from where that image is taken. And we showed from where those 3 images shared from where they were taken. And I showed him that this was taken from there, this, that, and this, that. And I'm really stopping on this because that shows the psychological effect that we're speaking with, right? It just shows the level of impact, the level of obligation, I would say, so this is a two-way things, and where this is ending up. And yet again, not because you don't believe me, but I was with other 2 persons that even themselves, when we spoke afterwards, we said, guys, this is where we are today, right? And he told me, and then after I showed him these pictures of Google, he told me, do you believe in God? I said, yes, I do, but why that? Well, even me, I do, right? But do you ever saw God? I said, no, right? And this is exactly what's happening, he told me, that I never saw her, but I believe that she's there. And then my counter-argument was, but God never asked you for money.
Right? And Ryan, these are real stories. They sound surreal, but they're not. They're not.
This is a story that happened in the last fortnight.
They're not surreal, and although they sound strange, but how could people have fallen victim to that? How could he have believed her? They are real. And it shows, and I don't want to pontificate or anything, it shows the level of sophistication of the fraudster. And later on, I want to ask you, Inspector, about who this fraudster is. Ryan, you mentioned a couple of things, and before I go to you, Ram, I just want to highlight some points that you had. You talked about the cameras on our building, the doors, the locks, but now we are dealing with a different type of crime, and the opportunity that there is different too. We are dealing with cyber-enabled crime. So the physical or the access to us is now open. Those locks that we have on our doors, those cameras that we have on the outside, the alarms, and let's keep them, are in this type of new world, not sufficient defenses to defend ourselves against cyber criminals. And you talked about phishing, smishing, and all this stuff. And Ramon, I want to come to you. So traditionally, when we talk about scams, we're talking about the BEC, we're talking about the investment scam and the romance scam, as Ryan was mentioning. We don't traditionally associate phishing attacks, ransomware with normal scams. Companies and businesses, and maybe their employees more importantly, are encountering phishing attacks on a daily basis, probably multiple times a day, 5 days a week, for those who work a 5-day week. At the end of the day, there's a fraudster behind that. And the intention of that fraudster is through blackmail, through deceit, to extrapolate money from that entity. Ramon, can you maybe briefly explain what is phishing and what is ransomware? And maybe more importantly, how can companies defend themselves or prevent or put better preventative measures to avoid these being subject to these fraudsters?
Thank you, Alan. So basically, phishing and ransomware are key business risks that any organization faces, irrespective of size and sector. Phishing is a type of cybercrime whereby bad actors seek to exfiltrate information, whether it's passwords, credit card information, personal details from their victims. They impersonate banks, authorities, well-established companies to lure their victims to falling into the scam. However, phishing can take a different twist as well. Phishing can be used to deliver malicious code to an organization. And this leads us to the concept of ransomware. In my opinion, ransomware is a bit more serious because ransomware is the act where the company's data has been encrypted with the malicious code delivered via phishing. And the company, in order to gain access back to its data, it needs what's called a decryption key. However, to obtain the decryption key, you would need to pay a ransom. You'd be asked to pay a ransom, which is effectively a form of extortion. According to US studies, less than 50% of those companies that experienced ransomware and paid the ransom, actually got their key, the decryption key back. So paying the ransom does not necessarily mean that you have the solution to fix the problem you had with ransomware. Ellen, you asked what are the solutions to phishing, to ransomware. Well, there isn't one size-fits-all solution, but from experience, we typically look at companies in 3 different areas for improvement. Typically the people, the processes, and technology. Let's look at technology first. So technology is an enabler. Yes, companies need to have updated tools, the latest tools, which have been updated to the latest software from the vendor. But one important message here is that software cannot be bought once and it's put in a fire and forget mode and you don't update it. It has to be kept up to date. And most importantly, people need to look, teams have to look at the alerts being generated by this software, in order to be able to join the dots, to identify potential anomalous behavior. When it comes to processes, segregation and segmentation is key. So segregation of duties when it comes to payments. So we have the approvers, the authorizers, but also from an IT point of view, segmenting your network. This could potentially limit the spread of ransomware on your network if you have proper segregation in your network. In terms of processes, one of the key value-adding proposal I can make here is to have what we call an incident response playbook, which has been written and tested on a regular basis. What do I mean by here? So the last thing you want is that you're hit by a ransomware and then all of a sudden you're in a state of panic and you don't know what to do, who to call, who to bring in. So very important, you need to have these, what we're calling IR playbooks, and you test them on a regular basis so that you make sure you reflect your current setup which you have in your business, because it's useless writing them in year 1 and then you'll experience a ransomware 6 years later. So this document is a live document which you need to keep up to date and test.
Ramon, Clive before mentioned the fact that scammers are working around technology and directing that scam on the people.
Exactly.
What are your recommendations there? How can companies place measures on people? What can be done?
People. I think it all starts. We need to set. So cybersecurity is not an IT issue. Cybersecurity is a key business risk. So for starters, there has to be tone at the top from boards. There has to be the take up from the board to accept the risk and manage this risk as an organization as a whole, not just as IT. And as a result of that, the board needs to provide both financial capital and human resources commitment to address cybersecurity. Furthermore, in a company there should be a culture, there should be a foster for a culture whereby there is an openness for users to come up and speak up when they've clicked on a link. The last thing you want is a user clicking on a link and not talking and not speaking up because he's ashamed or he thinks he did something bad and he'll be ridiculed or shamed. No, we need to foster a culture where there's an openness to come up and speak up, so in order for you to limit the damage that the person clicking on that link could have done, and by taking early action you would mitigate the damage that it could create.
So having a culture, creating this awareness, training people are part of the core defenses that companies must put in place.
Absolutely.
Because probably people are the biggest, or are a business's most vulnerable link, right? Their biggest asset, but potentially also their most vulnerable link. And Clive, we're looking at probably a different type of criminal now. We're looking at a criminal that is sophisticated, he's technology enabled, but Ryan was talking about the psychological impact and the psychological games that criminals play. This is a sophisticated criminal. Who are these criminals? Are they lone actors? Is this organized crime? Are these Maltese people who are doing this? Are these foreigners acting and through this opportunity that they can come and knock on everybody's door through cyber-enabled technology? What are you seeing from your investigations? What do the police see?
If I can give you a short answer, the answer will be these are organized crime groups. But if you indulge into the fact and how they operate, you will be seeing that there is no individual behind the laptop and trying to fraud you, like to keep it in as a basic. But it's quite sophisticated, as Ms. Bartel said and Mr. Ryan said, quite sophisticated. It's being evolved with the technology. Even as time passes, technology is evolving, so the opportunities are being created, and so the victims are being vulnerable to such criteria which are defenseless, I think. But I cannot exclude that there might be, because even in the past we have the lone wolves attacking that particular entity for particular reason, for particular motive. So I cannot exclude that. But the numbers, and I must repeat that the numbers are showing that they are coming from organized crime groups. It's like those groups who are issuing the fake invoices, those groups who are coming to try to lure through communication, like sending emails or SMSs or whatever, AI-generated cloning, deep fakes, whatever. You name it, you can name everything. So like there are even particular countries, we are observing that there are the Eastern Balkan countries, the West African, and the Asia particularly. So let's say to give you an example, very basic example, and not individualize a particular case, but let's say the IP addresses or the manner of communication is coming from the West African, the communication is coming from the Eastern Balkan, and the layering of funds is going to Asia. But the first step will be the money will go to EU, let's say EU bank, but regulated with the standard. But then if the funds are going beyond EU, for sure it's untraceable. But even though there is the digital print, but the money, the funds are being divided and going to different parts and to crypto wallets and cash. Even we saw the people cashing sort of small caches to avoid and trigger the alerts of the banks. So if you see a bigger picture of this, how is being and how the people are being affected, there is no one man doing this job. So there are, as we know them, there are the call centers. Like there's the managers, there are the recruiters. You can imagine the setup of like the police, the structure of the hierarchy of and we can adopt to this similar, but for sure for criminal intention. So we can exclude that we are being attacked by a well-sophisticated organized crime, and I am sure of this what I'm saying because when we share intelligence between Europol, between other counterparts, we are seeing that the same IBs, the same MOs, the same. There is an era being affected the West EU countries, and then it's shifting to the Eastern, and Christmas is coming, so there are even the typology of the scams are being affected under that particular era, like Christmas, Valentine. So it's very hard. It's very hard, but it's very hard to manage it, and that's why even by these initiatives and by the Bank of Valencia in the past, keep on stating like, we need to promote this and to do awareness and to make people more educated on this matter, because it is new thing. So we need to manage it and we need to fight it through awareness, of course, and they may help the police as well, the law enforcement, to conclude these offences.
Okay, that's both interesting and worrying. So if I can just sort of sum it, we're looking at organized groups, sophisticated groups. We're not looking at, although there can be Maltese players and actors, but we're looking at international actors here, right?
Yes.
And even the way that they operate is cross-border, across different continents, and moving those monies around, which obviously is done for a purpose and done for a reason, in order to ensure that tracing them down, tracking them down, will continue to be more difficult. And we were mentioning fraud. We were mentioning technology, and clearly technology is the enabler.
Yes.
Is the enabler. In good hands, technology is great. But when technology is falling into the wrong hands, this is where it is being used or misused and abused. And Ramon, I just want to ask you this question. What types of, can you share some examples of how maybe technology is being used incorrectly, badly, in order to scam people? And maybe more importantly, how do businesses combat this? Do you fight fire with fire? Do you hit technology with technology? What are your views on this?
Okay, interesting question. And so what businesses are experiencing today is what we're calling hyper-realistic social engineering, where basically through the use of deepfake, synthetic IDs and whatnot, they're making the scam more sophisticated to a level that even sometimes the tools themselves cannot trace. Needless to say, for example, scammers today, they only need 3 seconds of your voice to clone your voice and take pictures of you and create a deep fake of you to then all of a sudden create a video requesting something which you are actually not requesting. The inspector mentioned the call centers. Yes, there are call centers, we call them scam call centers, and they're making use of text-to-speech software whereby they write the text on what the AI wants them to read, and then when the victim starts interacting with the scammer, you're actually talking to an AI. And then, as the scam evolves, you're actually then talking to a human. So the level of sophistication that businesses and individuals are facing is something that is taken to a whole new level. You mentioned what are the solutions. Well, training of staff, yes, by all means. Training has to be there whereby users need to be able to identify, tell signs, like for example, incoherent face movement, the language might not be clear, but it's not just that. You also need to have segregation of duties, and you need to, like you said, fight fire with fire. So it's used as having an endpoint solution or an IT solution which is not dated, not catering for these types of hyper-realistic threats. But sometimes the answer is not in technology. Sometimes the answer is in the more traditional, I'd say, controls. So for example, I'll give 2 examples actually. There's one which is called the out-of-band communication. What do I mean by that? So if you receive instructions to pay an invoice via email, okay, to obtain confirmation from the authorizer, you don't send an email back. You go through the out-of-band channel, typically being a secure phone line or a secure messaging channel, to obtain confirmation from the authorizer saying, listen, I received this invoice for payment, can you please confirm? So the out-of-band channel needs to be pre-agreed from before. Another point which could help organization, again, which is not technology related, is through the use of safe words, okay? Whereby in order to authenticate yourself, especially for high value payments, you would use code words which are pre-agreed from before in order to authenticate yourself. these code words must not be something which can be easily be related to you. So, for example, if you are a sports enthusiast, you don't put your secret code, it's something which relates to your favorite team. Or if you're into travel, you don't put your favorite place which you usually visit. Reason being, because typically you share this information on social media, and as a result, scammers and bad actors can retrace that and somehow, through social engineering, reconstruct what that secret code would be. So very important that that secret code has to be unique and not relatable to you in any way. But if we had to look forward, we are in a new era of technology, okay, which is very exciting, which is called quantum computing, okay. This has the potential of changing lives, making good for and real good for the planet. But like Adam mentioned, you know, in the wrong hands, it will rewrite our rule book for cybersecurity. So this is something that companies need to be aware and start discussing this risk.
So Ramon, if I can understand, it's not, well, fighting technology with technology is important, but that human element continues to prevail. That level of skepticism, that questioning, but why? Let me call him up, or let me email him, or let me send a message to him, is important when something does not seem ordinary and does not seem right. So as a prevention to avoid falling victim to fraud and to scammers, the level of skepticism that the human must apply, must increase. And this is created, as the inspector said, through awareness, through awareness to the general public and to training internally in businesses. And I cannot emphasize this more. We talked about, and we're talking about the large amounts of monies that have been lost to scams, Ryan. Once you're scammed, you're scammed. The monies have been taken, the crime has been committed. Clive was talking about the sophistication of moving those monies, layering those monies cross-border jurisdiction, across different continents. But when your customer, Bank of Valleta's customer, has been scammed, what can a bank do? You're probably going to be the first person I'm going to call. What realistically can you do?
So let's start by that. When a customer is aware that he is potentially being scammed, he just needs to inform the bank ASAP. I would say, I don't know if Clive agrees with me, even
ASAP?
Meaning...
What emphasis do you put on that?
At that moment in time, right? So if you think that you're being scammed, don't wait for the evening, don't wait for the next morning, just stop whatever you're doing, phone the bank, go to the bank, call the bank. Okay? And I think, I don't know if Clive agrees with me perhaps on this, even before the police. Right, because at the end of the day, and I think he's agreeing with me, is that at one point in time we try to recover, to stop, right? But let's say to stop and to recover amounts. I want to say some amounts, but let's say the full amounts at first. So this is really important because then at least we can block certain things, stop certain things from keep on going. At least.
So time here, right? It's critical.
It's critical.
It's even 5 minutes.
It's more than critical.
Even 5 minutes can be.
And let me highlight why nowadays, even with certain regulations and certain expectations, for example, of instant payments, which is again, you said Ellen, that technology can, in good hands, can do very good things. This can be extended to whatever we do, right? So even perhaps. Having a knife just to cut some bread, we cannot do without, but even if it end up in a bad hands, it can do otherwise. Same as payments, payments, the world keeps on evolving, payments, institutions, and technologies have to evolve. Nowadays, when in the SEPA single payments, instant payments, from when you send a payment, if you choose this kind of means, to when the beneficiary receives is just in 10 seconds. So when you just go on your mobile banking, choose instant payments, the way of doing a payment, until somewhere else in the Eurozone, in SEPA, receives it, it needs to be 10 seconds. So is it critical time? So in 10 seconds you need to send it and to receive it from the other end. So this is how critical it is. And again, call the bank, speak with the bank, so we try Just want to stop and to prevent, at least going forward, but also to try and recover money back. We had some interesting successful cases, definitely on the high side of things, and this is where time was critical, even in BEC, even investments. So we were, I would say, lucky, if I need to use the word, because this is where even Clive mentioned earlier, there is an organized crime group there, the institutions being there, and then the money are being sent to somewhere else. So this is how we started with this. We speak with other banks where the money are ending up. However, most of them are also having our same issues, because they will be the first step from where the money is starting, and then it goes up to other banks in a smaller amount, to other jurisdiction, when it will be very difficult. To be honest, we have a good recovery rate. People might think it's 90%. Of course, it's not. It's around 20 to 25%, which I really think it's a good rate to recover the total amounts of money. So every now and then we have some good highlights, but here again, prevention is better than cure. Okay, so the most important thing in fraud, and I keep on stressing this kind of things, it's not the police, it's not Mazars, it's not Bank of Valletta, it's us. It's the people spotting the scam, this Christmas around the corner, and not being able to be a victim of, right? So spotting the scam, being able not be the victim of scam before you do it, it is the best control, because we all know, Clive mentioned, I mentioned, Rebecca mentioned, Ramon mentioned how difficult it is that once it happens, it happens. Mm-hmm. Of course, there are remedies. We try to do remedies. We try to speak with people. I just mentioned the other case, explain to people why this and that. But being very, very, very honest, we're being reactive to some of the cases, right? So you're already a victim once you're speaking with us. So the best thing is that sometimes people are too let's see what will happen, let's click on this. And if I need to just give this example was given to me by someone that was, and we were doing a webinar, myself and CEO of the bank, and someone out there highlighted that she received a message out of this phishing and smishing attacks, and there was this, your card is blocked, click on this link so that you will unblock. And something that she said, this was really making sense, she said that where I live there is a store, beneath where I live, and I just went to buy a bottle of water with my card to see if this is really a block or not. And this came from a particular individual, which, again, simple things. Right, you earlier mentioned that call back. If you are receiving something, just call back to see if it's really the same individual doing that. The urgency around it. If you're not informed that your accounts are blocked, why you are really believing that by that message your accounts are blocked? So these simple things that could save you money.
So Ryan, the bank does have some success stories, but I think it will be foolish to try to think that the bank will always cover your back, because even statistically it does not. So again, going to that skepticism, but for people to be skeptical, they need to be aware of that, And Ryan talked about reporting to the bank before the police. And Clive, you talked about underreporting. I know we're approaching our end of the time. Clive, just briefly, why should people? There are a lot of reasons why people might not report to the police. It could be shame, it could be a sense of failure and embarrassment. But why should people report to the police? Why is it important?
I cannot agree more what Ryan has just said, because this is fast-moving and fast growing rate financial crime. So if you act first, so you can have, or at least not continue to save more money. The numbers that are showing and being reported is not the true picture of the landscape of the Malta. Malta is not isolated, so we are part of the EU, and every country is going under these threats continuously. To report, it's irrelevant about the amount. If I lost 200 and if I lost 20,000, both are financial loss, but one is much less. But both are important for us, because since they are coming from the same organized crime, 200 from just that individual, multiplied by 100, it can cost much more money. For us, it's building more intelligence. We can share with Europol, with other police counterparts, with the banks, the local banks, which we have, specifically with the Bank of Valletta, we have a good relationship. So if you can have the true numbers, you can have a bit better picture, you can fight, you can transmit the awareness and make national campaigns or joint public-private partnerships. So that's the way forward for the Maltese. So reports are important, and as soon as you have the patterns, the trends, the numbers, you can build as well you can empower the prevention, and as well the victim must have the power to know, to be conscious about the trends and what may be suspicious, so he can prevent to do that sort of action that he fell for such scams.
So reporting is important.
Of
I mean,
course.
we're all embarrassed or feel a sense of something to have been tricked and to have been, but there's nothing to be ashamed of. So we all fall for victim.
Yes, yes.
I myself have fallen victim to a booking.com scam. So people play on that urgency. People work on the psychology for you to do it. So there's nothing ashamed to do. And by reporting, although you might not recover that 600 euros that you lost, but you are contributing maybe to the identification of that organized crime group. So
To dismantle it for
exactly, to prevent maybe others from being affected by others. And I bring my last question to you, Rebecca. We talked about the importance of awareness, the importance about maybe of building up more resilience in our communities. You know, how important are, for example, International Fraud Awareness Week, the initiatives that Bank of Valletta are taking, the Malta Police are taking. How important are these in creating more resilient, more knowledgeable communities that can exercise that level of skepticism?
I think from what we've all been saying, it's extremely important. Fraud awareness is the biggest defense. So research shows that people who do not, so organizations that do not train their employees for fraud awareness lose twice as much to fraud. So it's very important to have, and it's important that the training is done consistently, not just a one-off to tick the box. It needs to be done consistently because fraud schemes are always changing. These fraudsters are like 20 steps ahead of us, so we need to catch up. And you've also mentioned that they work on people's emotions, so the people themselves need to be able to spot that this is not right, something is not right, this is not normal, because they play on your trust, on routine. So I think, and obviously it's very important that people who are making the payments, people who are authorizing the payments, those people need to be trained to be able to spot the scam and just to close off this section, here at Forvis Mazars, we've created this guide. So this guide called Let's Stop Fraud, Spotting Scams and Schemes, as part of our international fraud awareness initiatives and our initiatives when it comes to fraud prevention and all of this. And this booklet is split into 3 sections. It talks about different consumer scams, different business scams, different technology scams, and the red flags and the key features of each, and what to do if you are actually scammed. There are the steps to take that if you are actually scammed. This booklet, this guide is available for download from our website, so just go into our website and go on the Let's Talk Fraud page.
Super duper. So thank you everybody. Time has flown by. And I would like to thank you all for having joined us for this hour. I know that there are some feedback forms that have been sent out. If you could complete them, that was really important to us because we value your feedback. And also it's important that if you want your CPE certificates, it's important that you put all your details in there. I want to thank all the panelists who have made this, I'm sure that you will all agree with me, this topic really interesting. My regret is that we only had an hour, and I think the topic deserves much more discussion, and the continued awareness is really important. So we're encouraged by the large number of people who have been attending this webinar, and I would also like to say that sort of as Forvis Mazars, we want to continue these outreach sessions. And over the coming months and throughout the year, we will continue to have topics focusing on fraud and centering around fraud. And if anybody wants further information or wants to follow us, as I said before, just follow us on LinkedIn or our social media channels, and you'll find the updates over there. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Rebecca, Clive, Ryan, Clive, and Ramon. Thank you all for having us, and I wish you a lovely rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.